So many filmmakers starting out in their careers want to be working on big sets, doing commercials, doing narrative features, really exciting projects. And I was definitely one of those too. But one of my first jobs was working at a production company where we did a lot of documentaries. And to be fully honest, at the time, I didn't think very highly of them. I thought they were a bit lame. I didn't really see the point in doing them. But what I didn't realize was that absolutely the most fundamental and important lessons that I learned that could apply to every other aspect of my filmmaking career and every other type of film and video that I worked on came from doing documentaries. So it doesn't matter if you're a director, an editor, a producer, a DP, and if you're working in socials, branded content, commercials, narrative, all of those, there are some extremely key, valuable insights that only documentary projects can teach you that I want to talk to you about. So the first point is that I think documentaries teach you problem solving like no other film set or project can teach you. Now, I know that every film project requires a lot of problem solving, and as a member of crew in whatever role that might be in, you're not only defined by the value you bring in terms of your skills or creativity, you are 100% defined by your value of how can you help people solve problems. And I truly believe that there is no harder set to be on in terms of problem solving than documentaries because of the complete limitations of control that you have over so many of the variables going on throughout the entire production process. You're working with real people, real locations, and therefore you have very minimal control over what you can actually do. So I think if you can thrive in problem solving in documentaries, you can thrive in problem solving on so many other sets. So the second point is that I think documentaries absolutely help you master storytelling. Because documentaries are dealing with real people, real lives, real stories that aren't clean-cut narratives, that aren't shaped or flow in a natural way, and they're overlapping themes, overlapping narratives, overlapping story beats, all these things. It's messy. People's lives are messy. And what working in documentaries teaches you to do is hone in on stories that are powerful and themes that are powerful and character arcs that are powerful, because you have to be able to kind of pick it out of that tapestry and then shape it into something that is a clear, clean story from, beginning, middle to end. And if you can understand how to pick stories out that are powerful from a mass of information, that can carry across to all other types of work. That can carry across to how to tell a brand story or tell a very quick story in a commercial or write a narrative, because in those kind of worlds, you'll have so many voices in the room who all have different priorities. And really part of your job is to hone in on what is the emotional core of the story or the narrative that the brand is trying to tell with that campaign or just as a brand overall. So taking that skill set from being able to really focus in on that from documentaries can carry across straight to those kinds of projects. Not only that, but because when you're working in verite scenes or real life scenes that are happening kind of then and there in the moment, you're having to very quickly figure out how to tell a very small story of a scene in real time whilst you're shooting. So you get very, very good, again, at constructing very small narratives very, very quickly out of real life situations. And again, that can carry across to any short form content, which are all based on storytelling. And you get very, very good at telling quick stories very well. So the next point is that documentaries teach you to work with non-actors. Now, you might think that this point is just for directors, but as a DP or a producer, you're going to be on set with actors and non-actors all the time. And so therefore, these principles can absolutely apply to so many other roles in filmmaking. And what you learn to do very quickly with non-actors that is absolutely essential in documentaries is building trust, because when you're working with these contributors that aren't actors, they need to trust you a huge amount in terms of them allowing you to tell their story and therefore opening up and being authentic with them. And obviously that can carry across to any set, any project, any role, because you're oftentimes thrown into projects with lots of crew that you've never worked with before and people that you've never met before, agency clients that you've never met face to face that come onto set. And you need to be able to build that trust with them very, very quickly so that they trust your leadership on set or they trust you in your role in whatever position that is, and you can work together as a team in that way. Working with non-actors also teaches you to be very non-intrusive with your communication, both to them and also to the crew around you, because you're trying to retain an environment that's very authentic to their normal environment. Therefore, you don't want to be having lots of voices shouting. You don't want to be creating an environment of high stress or anything like that. So you get very good at not only communicating with your crew in a non-intrusive way, but communicating with them in a non-intrusive way. And that can absolutely carry across to any other film set where there's going to be a lot more voices on set. Stress might be running high, but if you're able to retain that calmness and that presence and that clarity in your communication, you'll really foster an environment that is just a nicer experience for everyone. But all of those points only really apply if you can capture the things on film that you wanted to try and capture in the first place, which is why documentaries also absolutely make you a better cinematographer. So obviously, in terms of quality of cinematography, the main thing that documentaries teach you is how to work with and shape and control as much kind of natural light and natural environments as possible. You're often turning up to rooms and situations that you might never have seen before, have very limited control over what you can and can't do in those rooms. So it really trains your eye and your ability to find beauty in whatever is naturally present in that room. But the more important thing that I think working on documentaries teaches you as a cinematographer or as a camera operator is to start instinctively finding emotion and story within frames and shots. Because again, you're walking into scenes and moments that you won't have planned and you can't have planned. And you're watching emotions and narratives unfold in real time. And you need to be able to pick up on those emotions and those narrative beats and learn how to translate those in the moment instinctively into the shot choices that you are going for. So if there is intensity build up in someone's, inner emotions, maybe that means you instinctively start moving in closer and closer for a close up. Or if there's more of a dynamic energy in the room with the conversation between two people, maybe you instinctively know to stay wide and whip pan between the two of them. Whatever it is, it's being able to have an instinct of how to very quickly capture and translate the story that is happening right then and there into the frames and shot choices that you choose. The last thing that I think that it 100% helps with is for you to be able to understand what is and isn't essential coverage on the day. Again, you have no control a lot of the time in terms of timings, people, and therefore any shot list or shots you had planned might immediately go out the window, and you need to very quickly be able to determine what shots are or aren't essential to be able to edit this scene together properly and for it to make sense. And that skill of prioritization absolutely carries across to every single other type of project I've ever worked on. You never, ever have enough time to capture all the shots that you want to on the day, whether that be commercials or narrative or branded content, anything. And therefore, you need to be able to very quickly determine what is a priority and what isn't a priority. And working on documentaries forces you into those situations very, very quickly, and you get very, very good, very fast at being able to determine whether something is or isn't a priority. And although it's obviously always the intention to try and capture all the shots you need to be able to make a scene work in the edit, that isn't always possible, and that is where editing comes into the picture. Having edited a lot of documentaries now, I think there's probably 3 key things that they teach you that no other type of project can teach you. The first of those is mastering the craft of storytelling. Again, you're given hundreds of hours of footage and you need to be able to whittle that down into a very succinct story. So it teaches you discipline of storytelling. The second key thing is that you're not always given all the shots that you would ideally want or possibly even need to make a scene or a film work. And you need to become very creative in terms of your problem solving within editing. You need to think about how you can use very clever insert shots of glimpses of moments to be able to piece a scene together. Maybe the camera operator has held just a fraction longer on someone's line that you can then use for a cutaway reaction, which they weren't intending for, but which you can kind of muddle something together. There's so many times where that happens. So you learn to come up with very inventive solutions to problems that are in the edits. And the last thing that editing documentaries teaches you that I don't think anything else does is the fine art of emotional engineering. And what I mean by that is that you have to use all the tools available to you in an edit to really, really enhance and shape the emotions of a scene and a story, whether that be music, sound design, using a metaphorical piece of B-roll in a place that it wasn't intended, that kind of gives an interpretation of something. All of these things, it's the craft of really shaping emotion from this mass of film and kind of clay that you're given, and really learning how to work with all these elements to shape and mold that emotional core of the story. And the last point that I want to talk about is more on kind of a personal level, that documentaries, I think, teach you resilience more than any other filmmaking medium. And the reason for this is I think they are undoubtedly the sets that have the least amount of control, but also potentially require the most amount of commitment in order to get something very, very good from them. Because you're working with such unpredictable parameters, you're often at the beck and call of the contributors and the environments that they're in. You have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible. Things go less to plan on documentary sets than I think they probably do on any other set, because you cannot have such a plan, because you are working with uncontrollable variables all the time. And therefore, you need to get very, very good at just rolling with the punches, rolling with things not going the way you wanted to, but being able to not only roll with them, but find ingenuity and find creative solutions every single day, every single moment, to refocus yourself and refocus the project and keep finding the kind of golden nuggets in this massive chaos around you. And a lot of the time, it might just be you. It might be like two of you. So it's a very, very small set. So it really does fall on kind of your head to fix and find the solutions to so many of these problems. So I really do stand by that. I think every single filmmaker, irrespective of where you kind of want to end up or the projects that you want to be doing, should do a documentary project at least once, because of all the points we've talked about today. It masters your storytelling abilities. It masters your communication, your problem solving, your resilience, your ability to be flexible, adaptable. All of these skills are so essential on any set, and I think documentary teaches you that more so than any other medium.